Are you looking to use your 12 by 12 pattern paper on cards without making scraps? Hi, I'm Jess from JessCrafts.com, and I'm here to help you make the most of your crafty supplies and time. So let's get making. Today I have 12 by 12 paper busting template for A2 cards number 42. I have a total of 50 ideas for turning 12 by 12 pattern paper into A2 cards without making any patterned paper scraps. Many of these are available for free on JessCrafts.com. However, this one is part of a paid Etsy pack. You can purchase all 50 templates at one time. If you've purchased some of them in the past, like maybe you got it when it was the 1 through 40 bundle, the bundle of 40 ideas, you can purchase just the last 10 in the Etsy shop as well. And so, but today in this tutorial, I am going to be very, very clear so that you can recreate this card regardless of whether you choose to buy the templates. When cutting your paper and using tools like paper trimmers, please follow all manufacturers' safety instructions. And I am going to cut 2 pieces of patterned paper. I've already have one cut over here, but I'm going to cut 2 pieces of pattern paper to these sizes so that I can mix and match the patterns because I'm working with single-sided pattern paper. This was from Michaels and Kraft. It was the 2024 Sweet Harvest collection. I at least purchased mine at Michaels. I'm not sure if Kraft only sells at Michaels. And I am going to start by cutting off 2-inch strips off the bottom. Now, this paper that I'm working with isn't very directional. The other paper I was working with was directional. It does work with directional pattern paper, and for each 12 by 12 piece of pattern paper you use, you will make 6 cards. So I am cutting 2 inches off the bottom, and then another 2 inches off the bottom. So 2 by 12 inch pieces. The next I'm going to cut 3-inch piece off the bottom. So I'm going from 8 to 5 by subtracting 3. And now these 2 pieces, the one that is 5 by 12 inches and 3 by 12 inches, we're going to cut all of these at the 2-inch mark. So we make 6 pieces that are all 2 by 5 inches and then 2 by 3 inches. So we'll go to 10, 8, 6, 4, and finally 2 inches. And these are going to be this tall portion in the back of the card. We are making a portrait style card today. Sometimes you can change up the orientation of the card. You can experiment with things like that. I'm really trying to focus on giving you measurements that result in no scraps, but if you want to change up slightly how you use those pieces of patterned paper, you know, change the sketch or something like that, that is all up to you. So then these last 2 pieces that are 2 inches by 12 inches, we're going to cut at the 4-inch mark. So I am putting 2 pieces together. In addition to cutting all the patterned paper, I do also recommend cutting mats on most of my sketches. And on most of my sketches, they are 1/4 inch bigger. You will find the mat measurements right here alongside the measurements on the sketch, not on this template. This is just for the 12 by 12 paper or whatever pattern paper you're working with. The cardstock measurements, cardstock mat measurements are over here. So in this case, we have 2 by 4 inch pieces, 2 by 3 inch, 2 by 4 inch, and 2 by 5 inch. So all of our mats will be 2 1/4 by 3 1/4, 2 1/4 by 4 1/4, and 2 1/4 by 5 1/4. So we can make sure we have enough mats of each of those. We have 6 of each piece for each card, so I know I need 12 of each piece because I have cut enough to do 12. So the easiest thing for me is there's that one that's 4 inches, so it's a 4 1/4. This is an 8 1/2 by 11 piece of paper. So if I cut the 11-inch side to 2 1/4, then when I have 2 1/4 by 8 1/2, I can cut that in half, and it leads me to 4 1/4. And so I know I need 12 of these, and that is one way to be a little bit efficient with the pattern paper. I'm using a cardstock from Cardstock Warehouse that I believe is 100% recycled cardstock. It's a little bit thinner than I normally use, but I think it's a good solution for if you want to be I don't know, we use a lot of paper when we make cards. So I do think of other ways of being smart about my paper use that I'm not being as wasteful, but recycled cardstock can also be an option for that. Or, you know, if they use recycled I don't know if I've ever seen a collection of pattern paper that uses recycled materials as part of it. Okay, so I'm just gonna cut a bunch of mats at that 2 1/4 by 4 1/4 measurement. The other thing that I'm thinking about is I need 5 1/4. 11 inches in half is 5 1/2, so that's kind of close. So I wouldn't have much waste with that. Now I actually do have a 2 by 8 1/2 inch strip left over from cutting all of those, but that's a pretty sizable piece that I think I could easily use on a future card. So if I cut it's on the 11 inch side to 5 1/4, and then I cut the 8 1/2 inch side at 2 1/4 each time, I'm probably gonna be left with some scraps, but hopefully it will be on the more efficient side of things in general. So bring that to 2 1/4. I'm getting like 6 out of a single piece, so I would need 2 pieces for that. I'm being left with this 2 by 5 1/4 inch piece, and then on this, when I bring it to 5 1/4, I'm gonna be left with this 8 1/2 by 1/2 inch strip. I think I have my measurements right there. I'll have 2 of these because I'll need 2 pieces of cardstock to create that. And so what I'll do is I'll take these 2 relatively small strips that might be kind of hard to use, and I'll glue them together to create what I call fake foam tape, where I just use a little bit of layered cardstock behind images rather than using foam tape. And so then for the 3 1/4 by 2 1/4 inch piece, I don't know that I have any good suggestions for how to super efficiently get that out of 8 1/2 by 11 cardstock, but know that you will need 6 of those for each 12 by 12 piece. So just to review, you need 2 1/4 by 3 1/4, 2 1/4 by 4 1/4, 2 1/4 by 5 1/4. You need 6 of each for each piece of 12 by 12 pattern paper you have. Cut them as you will out of your scraps and cardstock. I am working with some fall and fall themed paper today, some that's pumpkins, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to show you how you could get a little bit more use out of certain Halloween sets and like things you could think about. So I have this Lawn Fawn Halloween mice stamp set, and really super cute images for Halloween. And I could see using some of them for, I guess, a few other things like the princess. You could just totally use that just like an everyday card, you know, like something like maybe a sentiment like "you sparkle" or something could work well for that. Although the other ones, a lot of the other images are a little bit more specifically Halloween, witch, ghost, that kind of thing, or he's holding a jack-o'-lantern. But this jack-o'-lantern mouse is the one I'm going to focus on today. The princess one is pretty clear how else you could use it, but the jack-o'-lantern mouse takes a little bit more work to use on a non-Halloween card, and that's because we need to take the jack-o'-lantern face off of the stamp. Now, the way we're going to do that is with masking. So I'm not going to do anything to alter the stamp itself. I am taking a little piece of the scrapbook.com mint tape, and I cut a small like oval shape out of it. This is all covered in ink at the moment because I've been using it to stamp these images, and I have been placing, I cut it so that it covered just the face of the jack-o'-lantern. I'll try to bring that a little bit closer so you can see it. So I've made sure that that little kind of it's like kind of like a sticker, but it's a low tack tape. Post-it tape would work similar, and I've placed it over just that face part of the image. Then I'm ready to ink up my stamp. I do find something like this easiest to do with a stamp positioning tool. I'm using a Misty today, but this way, if you make any mistakes, it can be a little bit easier to fix if you don't get a great impression the first time. So adding a little bit of ink Lawn Fawn Copic Safe ink in the jet black color. And now I'm going to take my tweezers and I'm going to pull up very carefully. Don't, you don't want to damage your stamp, and all of this kind of at your own risk with the stamps, but I don't want to scrape it and gouge the stamp or anything. So carefully pull it up and then stamp it down, and you should be able to get an impression that does not have the jack-o'-lantern face on it. And now we just have a general pumpkin image that we can use for like a Thanksgiving or happy fall card. So we've added a little bit more versatility to our stamp set. So once I finished stamping all of my images without the jack-o'-lantern face, I have a bunch of really cute fall images, a little mouse inside a pumpkin. He does have a little bit of a large space there at the center of the pumpkin where the face was, so you could add a sentiment in there, but I don't think it looks incomplete. I think that it doesn't even look, to me, it doesn't look like anything is missing in these images, but just something to factor in. I did only make 8 of these because I had the inspiration before I knew what I would do with them. I just was like, I know I can use these for a fall card. So I just stamped and colored what I thought was a bunch of them. I thought I'd probably make like maybe 6 cards or something, and I always like to have backups. So I might pick a different embellishment, but I just wanted to make sure that I shared that idea with you because I venture that you might have some other stamp sets that have jack-o'-lanterns that could be turned into just pumpkins with that masking technique. So I was trying to think of what I would do to embellish the last 2 cards, since I'm going to be, or 4 cards. I'm going to be making 12 of these in all. But I do want to stamp the sentiment. I decided to take a risk and see if I thought that I could stamp directly onto this pumpkin pattern paper. It's like a touch busy, but it's also very overall light colors. So I thought if I stamped my sentiment, which is Happy Fall from the Lawn Fawn Tiny Tags Saying stamp set, Tiny Tags Fall, would it be readable? And because I am stamping 12 of these all in the same spot, I did decide to use my Misty. For sentiments, I will often just stamp with a stamp block, and I think that would be fine, but because I knew that once I set it up, I would get a lot of use out of it. I will say there are, because the pattern paper is going to be positioned a little bit differently on each one, some of them might feel more readable than others. If a particular one, if you're, I mean, you could be totally using different paper, but if you are stamping directly onto your patterned paper and you feel like it turns out that it's not very readable, this method where we have no scraps, you can't go ahead and replace this pattern paper. You got to figure out how to use it. So what I would do in that instance is just take like a banner sentiment die and stamp my sentiment again and then cover it, or like a circle die or something like that in order to recover the patterned paper. And so then in terms of embellishments, and I think in this case, I wanted to think about my embellishments before I glued everything down. So that's why I'm kind of going a little bit all over the place. I feel like it makes sense, but it feels a little disjointed at the moment. So I have my little pumpkin mouse. I'll take that. I mentioned, I would glue pieces of cardstock together and I will pop up my mice with that. But then what I could do for the other cards, I remembered that I have this Mintay Papers Autumn book. It might have been a free with purchase item from scrapbook.com in the past. It does say 2023. So it has a lot of images in it that you are meant to cut out. Now the back sides do have some really pretty pattern papers and you could totally use those. It's a 6x8 pattern paper pack, but some of them I knew, like particularly this one, I'm like, those are really cute. I would rather use them than the other side. So I have fussy cut out some of these already, and I'm gonna see if I can use 4 of them for these cards. I think I'll be able to find some images. And that's why I kept a really simple, like happy fall sentiment. I could try the pumpkin pie. I think that works, but I might wanna save that for a specifically Thanksgiving type card. This bunny would overhang a little bit, but he's probably a good fit, a scarecrow, the fox, maybe this squirrel fits a little better. I'll kind of figure out which one, which fit the best, but you could also like combine, like here, there is like a drink and a cupcake. I think I would rather do that than just the drink, although scale-wise it is pretty similar to the mouse, but it feels a little bit incomplete, whereas I really like the set of 2. And I think it gives me a good reason to use that cupcake. If I don't use that cupcake now, I might get to the point where I only have small images, like really small images left, and they might feel a little harder to use on cards. So I like to keep that kind of thing in mind. But I think that this will give me the embellishments that I need for the final cards. So now that we have all of the cardstock pieces, pattern paper pieces, embellishments, everything ready to go, I've made the decision about how the sentiment, all that, I'm ready to assemble according to the sketch. And so I see that the back layer is this 4 1/4 by 2 1/4 inch piece of cardstock, and that should fit pretty much perfectly across the card. I am just kind of estimating, you know, where I'm putting it on the card. I don't give you measurements like put it 1 inch from the base or anything like that. I'm mostly just kind of giving you a general idea of where to place each of these. And then this 2 1/4 by 5 1/4 inch piece goes on top of that. Oh, I think that I miscalculated, but we'll make it work. I wanted to vary the patterns in a particular way, and I think that basically you can choose whether you want these two to match or the back and the front to match. So if I want the back and the front to match, then I'm going to need to pull one of these pumpkin papers. I have, of course, all of them cut and set aside. So I think that my personal preference is to have the very back piece and the front piece match, so that these two that are right next to each other and you see a lot of aren't matching. But of course, totally up to you about how you'd like to combine your papers. You could, of course, cut 3 papers too and make each one of these a different pattern. And that would be a way of mixing up the pattern so that none of the matching ones are touching. Whatever works best for you. I usually only use 2 patterns just because double-sided paper is pretty common. So once I put on my little mouse from Fawn that we have changed up from a Halloween stamp to a fall stamp, I am complete with 1 card, and I'm just going to assemble all the rest in the same way. I will keep assembling cards until I have 12 complete cards, 6 from each sheet of 12 by 12 patterned paper. You can pick up this template in the Etsy shop if you like, and there's a link in the video description as well as a coupon code down there. If you found this video helpful, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know you like this video with a share to your crafty community. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video.